She swept the floors of a music academy for years, until one day she stepped on stage, sang her heart out, and silenced a room full of doubters with a standing ovation. Mira's life had always been quiet, simple, and ordinary to anyone watching from the outside. She lived in a small rented room at the edge of a noisy neighborhood in a crowded Indian town. Her home had only the basics: a small bed, a fan that made too much noise, and an old wooden cupboard that smelled faintly of incense and old books. Every morning, she woke up before sunrise, made herself a cup of tea with 2 spoons of sugar, and started her day with the same calm routine. There was nothing flashy about her life, but there was something warm in the way she smiled at people or fed the street dogs with leftover chapudas. She worked as a cleaner at the town's most respected music academy, Swar Sadhna Sangeet Vidyalaya. The academy was famous for training gifted students in Indian classical music. Children of rich families came there to learn instruments like sitar, tabla, harmonium, or to train their voices under expert teachers. The academy was a place of pride in the city, but for Mira, it was her quiet temple. Each morning, after sweeping the front porch, she would carefully clean the dusty wooden floors of the practice halls. Her hands moved with rhythm, almost like a silent dance. But her ears were always busy. She listened to the riyats of students, to the warm-ups, the tans, the ragas flowing through the air like invisible threads of gold. She had never received a single lesson, never sat in a class, and never dared to enter a music room unless it was empty. Yet she knew the names of ragas. She recognized the beat of the tabla, and her heart could sense when a note was slightly off. No one had taught her. She had simply listened and absorbed everything over the years. Like dry soil drinking the rain, she had been working at the academy for nearly 14 years. She was always on time, always polite, and never in anyone's way. To most people there, she was just Miraben, the cleaner who was easy to forget. Some students smiled at her out of habit, and a few teachers nodded when they passed by, but no one ever asked her name with interest. They didn't know that when the music halls were empty and silent, Mira would sometimes walk in softly, sit, cross-legged on the floor, and hum to herself in a voice so pure and deep that it would give goosebumps to anyone listening. If anyone had ever cared to, her love for music had started in childhood. Mira came from a poor family in a village where the radio was the only entertainment. Her father was a farmer, her mother sold vegetables in the market, and she was the youngest of 4 siblings. Every evening, after helping her mother wash dishes, she would sit by the radio and listen to old classical songs. She didn't understand the lyrics at first, but the sound of the tanpura, the echo of a singer holding a note for several seconds, all of it gave her an unknown joy. She would try to copy the songs, matching the pitch, holding the breath just as long, and somewhere in that small corner of the world, little girl's soul started dreaming in notes and rhythms. But dreams in poor homes often have to wait, or die quietly. When Mira was just 13, her father passed away, and she had to leave school to earn money. By the age of 15, she was working as a housemaid. Music became a luxury she could only enjoy during stolen moments. Years passed, and she never received any formal education in music. Yet the fire inside her didn't go out. Instead, it glowed quietly, hiding beneath her duties, beneath her quiet smiles and faded saris. When she first came to the academy to work as a cleaner, she had felt it was fate playing a kind trick on her. How could she, a woman who had never seen the inside of a music classroom, end up working inside one of the most famous academies in the region? For Mira, it was like being allowed to live inside a dream without ever being allowed to touch it. But she didn't mind. She was grateful just to be near the music. She considered herself lucky to hear the ragas live every day. She cleaned the practice rooms with more care than most people dusted their own temples. Every corner held sound. Every crack in the wall carried a memory of someone singing. There were times when the students made fun of her behind her back. Once a young boy had dropped his harmonium keys and told her to be careful. This is not your kind of place. Another time, a rich girl who struggled with her sir had loudly joked, "Even the cleaner probably sings better than me." It had made Mira smile for the rest of the day. If only they knew, she thought silently. The only person who ever noticed Mira's secret was the old security guard at the academy gate. Ramlakaka was in his 60s and had worked there since its opening. One day, many years ago, he had forgotten his phone in the corridor and returned quietly, only to find Mira sitting alone in the rehearsal room, humming softly. He didn't interrupt. He simply sat outside and listened. After that, he never said much about it. But every now and then, he would say to her, "Mirabin, your voice is like butter on hot roti, melts straight into the heart." She would blush and change the topic. Meher had no ambition to become famous. She didn't dream of concerts or trophies. Her only wish when she never spoke aloud was to sing once, just once, on the stage of the academy. Not for the crowd. Not for applause, but for herself. To stand there and let her voice rise where so many others had before her. To claim that one moment, even if no one clapped, even if no one noticed. That quiet wish lived in her heart, like a candle that refused to go out. But in a world where only the well-dressed and well-trained are invited to perform, Mira never believed such a moment would come, until one day, everything changed. A poster appeared at the academy gates. It was bright, bold, and made of thick, glossy paper, unlike the usual notices. The academy was celebrating its 50th anniversary, and there would be a special performance night featuring the best talents selected through open auditions. What caught everyone's attention was a single line printed in gold. Auditions open for all students, teachers, and lovers of music. It was the talk of the town. More importantly, the chief guest and judge for the evening was none other than Pundit Ravi Deshmukh, a world-renowned maestro who had trained in Benares, performed. Across Europe, it was considered a living legend in Indian classical music. He had once taught at the academy many years ago and was returning as a special honor. Students were excited. Teachers were nervous. The whole campus buzzed with excitement. Everyone wanted a chance to impress the maestro. Sign-up sheets filled. Quickly, everyone who is anyone added their name. Everyone except Mira. For 2 days, she walked past the audition notice without looking at it. Her heart beat faster each time, but she convinced herself that such opportunities were not for her. Who would take her seriously? She was just the cleaner, invisible as always. But that night, she couldn't sleep. Her heart kept whispering, "It's open for all," they said all. Maybe just once, maybe just try. The next morning, she woke up earlier than usual and stood near the gate where the sign-up sheets were pinned. No one was around. Her hands trembled as she picked up the pen. She stared at the empty space on the sheet. Instead of writing Mira, she wrote M. Joshi, using her late father's surname, something she never did. Then she walked away quickly, not looking back. Ramlo Kaka watched her from a distance. He smiled softly and muttered, "About time." That evening, she stood alone on her terrace, looked up at the sky, and hummed a soft Rag Bhairavi. Her voice carried in the air, mixing with the rustle of leaves and the faint horns of traffic in the distance. For the first time in her life, she had taken a step toward her silent dream, and the world, without knowing it, had started to turn in her favor. The week after Mira signed her name on the audition sheet felt like a dream she didn't know how to handle. Every day she cleaned the academy with the same routine, swept the same corners, wiped the same floors. But something inside her had changed. She was no longer just a cleaner moving silently between classrooms. She had taken one brave step into a space she had only admired from a distance her whole life. Her name, though disguised as M. Joshi, was now part of a list filled with the best students and performers in the academy. The thought both excited and terrified her. The academy had never been this alive before. Ever since the announcement of the open auditions for the 50th anniversary concert, the air had become thick with tension and excitement. Students walked faster, teachers spoke in whispers, and the sound of music filled the halls from morning till evening. It was not the usual casual practice anymore. Every beat was now done with extra energy and seriousness. Everyone wanted to be perfect. After all, the chief guest and judge was none other than Pandit Ravi Deshmukh, a name that carried power in the world of Indian classical music. Pandit Ravi was not just famous, he was a legend. He had performed in front of kings and presidents, taught in prestigious music universities abroad, and had received awards that most musicians only dreamed of. People said he could hear one note and immediately tell whether the singer had real talent or not. Some even joked that he could tell if your soul was in the right place just by how you held your breath before singing. His reputation was strong, and his judgments were known to be honest and sharp. He never gave compliments unless they were truly earned, so naturally. Everyone preparing for the auditions was nervous. Some students practiced for 6 hours a day. Others paid for private coaching outside the academy. Even the music teachers, some of whom had been working at the academy for decades, were secretly preparing their own performances, hoping to earn a moment of praise from the maestro. The pressure was high. People were smiling less and practicing more. Mira watched all of this silently, with wonder and fear mixed together. She had no teacher. She had no fancy clothes or musical instruments. She had only her voice nurtured. Over years of secret practice and love for music, she had no idea how auditions worked, or what rules she had to follow, or what expectations Pandit Ravi would have. All she knew was how to sing from her heart. Late at night, when the academy was locked and everyone had gone home, she would sometimes go to the rooftop of her small building. There, under the open sky, and among the soft sounds of distant traffic, she would sing quietly, practicing the ragas she had heard again and again inside the academy walls. Sometimes her notes came out soft and clear. Sometimes she made mistakes and laughed at herself. But always her voice came from the same place, from deep within her soul. The only person who knew what she was doing was Ramla Kaka, the old guard. One evening, he found her sitting alone outside the audition room, just staring at the walls. "Nervous?" he asked. Gently, Mira looked up and gave a weak smile. "I don't know what I'm doing." "You're doing what your heart told you to do," he replied. "That's more than most people manage in their whole life." She didn't answer. But his words stayed with her. The day of the auditions finally arrived. The academy looked almost like a festival ground. Flowers decorated the gates, colorful banners welcomed guests, and a small team of photographers and local press reporters had arrived early. Everyone wanted to capture the moment when Pandit Ravi Deshmukh would enter the building after so many years. Chairs were arranged neatly in the garden area for visitors, and a special audition stage had been set up in the main auditorium. Mira stood near the back gate, dressed in her simplest sari. It was clean, ironed, and light blue in color. Her hair was tied in a neat bun, and she had borrowed a pair of simple earrings from a neighbor. She didn't wear any makeup, didn't carry a handbag, and didn't bring anyone with her. She came, quietly like always, slipping through the side entrance and walking slowly toward the waiting area. The audition list was being called out one by one. Most of the names were students or teachers. Everyone knew them, clapped politely when they were called, and watched their performances with serious eyes. Some were excellent, some were nervous, and some forgot their lyrics in the middle and had to apologize. The judges sat at a long table near the front, with Pandit Ravi in the center, flanked by 2 senior music teachers from the academy. Pandit Ravi sat calmly, dressed in a cream-colored kurta with a thin shawl draped over one shoulder. His eyes were sharp but kind. He said little, only nodding or raising his hand gently when he wanted the next person to begin. He took notes silently and only occasionally whispered something to the person beside him. His face gave away nothing. Mira's heart began pounding when she heard her name being called M. Joshi. There was a pause. No one had heard this name before. The volunteers near the stage looked confused. One of them called out again, louder. This time, Joshi. Mira stood up slowly. When people saw her walking toward the stage, they began to whisper. Some students exchanged amused looks. A few teachers frowned. Even the volunteers hesitated for a moment. It was clear she didn't belong there. She wasn't dressed like a performer. She didn't carry an instrument. She didn't have the posture. or confidence of someone used to the spotlight. When she reached the front, one of the volunteers asked softly, "Are you sure you signed up?" She nodded silently and handed over her slip. They had no choice but to let her stand on stage. Pundit Ravi raised his eyes and looked at her. His face didn't change, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his expression. Perhaps he had seen her before, sweeping the floors. Perhaps he thought she was a joke. Either way, he leaned back and said, "All right, what will you sing?" Mira's hands trembled slightly. "Rag Yaman," she whispered. There was silence in the room. A few people chuckled. One of the young students near the back even muttered "Rag Yaman" from her. Pundit Ravi raised an eyebrow. "You want to sing Yaman?" "Yes," she said softly. He looked at her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Begin." Mira took a deep breath. She closed her eyes, and then, she sang. The first note left her lips like a drop of pure water falling into a still pond. It was steady, clear, and hauntingly beautiful. The room, which had been full of low whispers and judgment, suddenly became completely silent. The sound of her voice, shaped by years of silent devotion and love, filled the auditorium like sacred air. She didn't try to impress anyone. She didn't add fancy runs or dramatic gestures. She just sang with calm and dignity, as if the raga had always lived inside her as she moved through the alop. Her voice floated smoothly from one note to the next, touching every swar with precision and feeling.
Ah.
Her eyes remained closed, and she looked peaceful, almost like she was praying. Time seemed to slow down. The audience forgot who she was. They forgot what she looked like. All they could hear was music, pure, soulful, powerful. When she finished, there was no sound for a few seconds, and then slowly, a few people began to clap. It started with Ramlo Kaka sitting in the last row. Then a teacher near the corner joined in, then another. And soon, the entire room was filled with applause. Not polite claps, but real appreciation, deep surprise. Emotional Pundit Ravi didn't clap. Instead, he leaned forward, looked directly at her and asked, "Who taught you?" She opened her eyes and said, "No one." He stared at her. Then he spoke again, this time louder. "Where did you learn to sing like that?" Mira swallowed hard. "I work here, sir, as a cleaner." Listened. For years. The room froze. Some mouths hung open. Others looked down in shame. Pundit Ravi looked at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time that day, he smiled. He nodded slowly and said, "You have the soul of a true musician." Then he turned to the organizers and said, "She will perform on the main stage." No one dared to object. Mayer stood there, unsure whether she was dreaming or awake. But in that moment, she had crossed a line, moved from the shadows into the light. She had come to the audition thinking she would sing quietly and leave unnoticed. Instead, she had shaken the very foundation of the place that never saw her as more than background. As she walked down the stage, people looked at her differently. Some bowed their heads in respect. Others stepped aside to make way. No one laughed. No one doubted anymore. And Mira, she felt lighter than ever before, because for the first time, her voice had been heard, and it had spoken louder than any words ever could. After the auditions ended that evening, there was a strange silence in the academy. Not the usual kind of quiet that comes after a long day, but the kind of stillness that comes when something unexpected happens. Something that makes people stop and think. Everyone had witnessed a moment that none of them could have imagined. A woman they had all ignored, laughed at, or simply walked past every day had walked on stage and sung with a voice that could silence the world. Mira, Aklina.Mera, who had no formal training. Mira, whose name no one even knew properly before that day. But now, everyone was talking about her. Students whispered in groups near the garden. Teachers who had taught for years were exchanging glances, feeling a mix of surprise and, for some, even shame. The same people who had never once asked her how she was now spoke of her talent with wide eyes and lowered voices. No one had expected her to sing like that. No one had expected her to shake the very soul of the academy. After her performance, Mira had quietly returned to her small room, carrying only the sound of applause in her heart. She didn't talk much to anyone, didn't celebrate, didn't even eat dinner properly. She sat near her window, looking at the stars and thinking about what had just happened. For years, she had dreamed of singing once on that stage. And now, not only had she sung, but she had left the audience stunned, and even Pundit Ravi. Deshmukh had praised her. She could still hear his words in her head. "You have the soul of a true musician." Those words didn't just feel like praise. They felt like a key unlocking something inside her, something that had been waiting for years to be seen and accepted. The next morning, something even more unbelievable happened. Mira received a message that Pundit Ravi himself wanted to meet her in the music room. At first, she thought it was a joke. Why would a world-famous maestro want to speak to her? She stood in front of the mirror, fixing her hair twice, wiping her forehead nervously, and finally, choosing a plain but neatly ironed sari. Her heart pounded as she walked through the corridors. This time everyone looked at her. Some smiled, others stepped aside. She wasn't invisible anymore. When she entered the room, Pundit Ravi was already there, sitting calmly with a tanpora resting beside him. His eyes met hers, and he smiled, not the kind of polite smile people give out of kindness, but the kind that says, "I see you. I respect you." He asked her to sit. For a few seconds, she didn't know what to say. Finally, she gathered her courage and whispered, I never thought you'd call me." He chuckled softly and said, "Neither did I. But then again, I've never been surprised like that in years." She looked down, not knowing what to say. He leaned forward slightly and asked, "Tell me the truth. How did you learn to sing like that?" She told him everything. It's about her childhood, the old radio, her father's early death, her years as a maid, her time at the academy cleaning rooms, and how she had learned music by listening, only listening, always from the shadows. He listened carefully, without interrupting once. When she finished, he sat back and said, "Do you know how rare it is for someone to develop a voice like yours without a teacher, without practice in front of a guru, without even basic training?" She didn't reply. He continued, "What you have cannot be taught. It's born and hidden inside you all these years." Then he made an offer that almost made her heart stop. "I want to personally train you for the upcoming performance." Eyes widened in disbelief. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. He smiled again and said, "I don't offer this to just anyone, but you. You deserve it." From that day on, Mira's world changed. Every morning after finishing her cleaning duties, she would meet Pundit Ravi in the small, quiet room at the back of the academy. It had no chairs, just cushions, a tanpora, and the smell of sandalwood. There, he taught her what most people took years to learn, the finer details of classical music. How to breathe, how to hold a note, how to feel the raga with not just the voice, but with the soul. She listened carefully, never interrupting, never questioning. She respected him deeply, not just as a teacher, but as someone who had seen beyond her appearance, beyond her role, and into her true self. As days passed, people began noticing the change. Her voice, already beautiful, became more controlled, more expressive. The ragas flowed out of her with more grace and understanding. Teachers and students would sometimes gather near the room, pretending to pass by, just to hear her sing. The same people who had once mocked her now listened in. Silence, unable to deny the truth. Myra was extraordinary. There were still whispers, of course. Some people couldn't believe it. Some said she must be lucky. Others said maybe Pundit Ravi was just being kind. But those voices grew quieter with time, especially as her rehearsals continued and her performances became more breathtaking. One afternoon, after a particularly moving rehearsal of Rag Darbari, Pundit Ravi said something that she never forgot. "You know, Mira, when I first saw you walk on that stage during the audition, I thought it was some kind of mistake. I thought someone had let in a joke. I was ready to be annoyed. But then you sang. And I realized how blind I had been." She looked at him, surprised by his honesty. "I judged you," he said simply. "Not because you were not talented. I judged you because you didn't look like someone who belonged on that stage. That was my mistake. One I will never forget." His words humbled her deeply. She replied softly, "I never wanted to prove anything to anyone, sir. I just wanted to sing once, before I grew too old to try." Smiled, and now the whole city will hear you. As the date of the 50th anniversary celebration came closer, excitement grew. Posters were printed. The mayor and many famous personalities were expected to attend. News had already spread that a mysterious new voice, a woman with no formal training, would be performing under the personal guidance of Pundit Ravi Deshmukh. The city buzzed with curiosity. Who was she? Where had she come from? How could someone like that be discovered in a music academy where everyone thought they knew everyone? People from other cities started calling the academy, asking about tickets. The main auditorium, which had a capacity of 1,000 seats, was fully booked within 3 days. Everyone wanted to witness the miracle they had only heard about in whispers. Meanwhile, Mira kept preparing day and night. She didn't let the attention distract her. Her life remained the same. She still cooked her own food, fed the street dogs, and helped the elderly woman next door carry her water buckets. The only thing that had changed was the fire inside her. It now burned brighter, stronger, not hidden anymore. One evening, she sat on the academy steps with Ramlo Kukka, watching the lights being put up for the big event. "You were right," she said. He looked at her, confused. "About what?" "That the heart always knows where it belongs. It just takes time for the world to catch up." He smiled gently, pride glowing in his eyes. The day before the concert, she received a small package at her doorstep. Inside was a new silk sari, deep maroon with a golden border. There was no note, but she knew who it was from. She held it to her chest and whispered a quiet thank you to the universe. That night, she couldn't sleep, not because she was scared, but because her heart was full of memories, of all the times she had sung alone, of her father's old radio, of the first time she saw the academy, and of that moment when Pundit Ravi had asked, "Who taught you?" She had waited her whole life for this moment, and now it was here. The morning of the 50th anniversary concert dawned with a quiet excitement in the air. The whole city seemed to be waiting with bated breath for what was about to happen. The music academy was dressed in its finest flowers, hung on every door. Colorful lights decorated the trees, and the large auditorium buzzed with visitors. People from all walks of life had gathered, their students, teachers, music lovers, city officials, journalists, and fans of Pundit Ravi Deshmukh, who wanted to witness this grand celebration. Mira woke up early that day. Her heart was full of nervous energy and hope. She was no longer just the woman who swept floors. She was the woman who would sing in front of hundreds of people and a legendary maestro. She carefully wore the maroon silk sari she had received the day before. The golden border shimmered softly in the morning light. She tied her hair neatly and didn't wear much jewelry, just a small bindi on her forehead. She wanted to look simple but dignified. She ate a small breakfast and then sat quietly for a few moments, closing her eyes and breathing deeply. Her thoughts went back to all the years she had spent hidden in the background cleaning rooms, listening to music from behind closed doors, dreaming silently. She thought of her father's voice on the old radio and how he had told her once, "Sing with your heart, and the world will listen." Now the world was finally listening. When Mira arrived at the academy, the energy inside was electric. The backstage area was crowded with performers tuning their instruments, adjusting their costumes, and whispering to each other. Some of the academy's best students were there, dressed in elegant traditional clothes, carrying sitars, tablas, and harmoniums. They were excited but also nervous, aware that the audience expected a grand performance. Mira's turn was toward the middle of the program. She waited quietly in a small green room near the stage. Pundit Ravi was there too, calm and supportive. He smiled at her and said, "Remember, sing from your heart. Nothing else matters." The first few performances went smoothly, with applause ringing after each one. Mira watched, learning from each act the way the artists moved, how they interacted with the audience, the way they expressed emotion not just through sound, but through their whole being. The auditorium was filled with the sounds of beautiful ragas, heartfelt ghazals, and lively folk songs. The crowd was engaged, clapping warmly, and some even tapping their feet to the rhythm. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Announcer spoke into the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present a special performance by a very talented student of our academy, trained personally by Pundit Ravi Deshmukh. Please welcome Meera Joshi. A hush fell over the crowd. Some faces showed curiosity, others surprise. There were whispers about the woman who had stunned everyone during the auditions. Meera stepped onto the stage slowly, feeling the bright lights warm on her face. She took a deep breath and glanced at the audience. There were so many faces, young and old, familiar and new, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt a strange calm wash over her. The tanpura player tuned the strings softly, and the tabla player waited for her cue. She closed her eyes and began with the slow, soothing notes of Rag Yaman. Her voice floated out like a gentle breeze, smooth and steady. Every note was clear and full of feeling. The crowd was captivated. It was as if the music carried them to a different place, one filled with peace and beauty. As she sang, Meera thought about everything she had been through. The long nights of practice, the doubts, the fears. But none of that mattered now. She was free. Free to express herself, free to share her soul with the world. Her voice grew stronger as she moved into the more complex parts of the raga. Audience was silent, hanging on every note. Some eyes were closed, some heads nodded slowly in appreciation. Even Pundit Ravi watched with a proud smile, knowing that she had truly become a musician. When she finished, the auditorium erupted into applause. It was not just polite clapping, it was loud, enthusiastic, and full of admiration. People stood up, cheering and whistling. Some wiped tears from their eyes, touched by the beauty of her voice and the story behind it. Meera stood quietly, a smile breaking across her face for the first time in a long while. She felt a wave of gratitude and joy flood her heart. This was a moment she had dreamed of for so long, and it was more wonderful than she had imagined. After her performance, many people came backstage to congratulate her. Students who had once ignored her now spoke with respect and warmth. Teachers who had doubted her talent now asked her how she had learned to sing so beautifully. Reporters took notes and asked for interviews. Some even wanted to write stories about her journey from a simple cleaner to a shining star of classical music. But through all the attention, Meera remained humble. She thanked everyone politely and spoke softly about her love for music. She told them how much she owed to Pundit Ravi's guidance and how she hoped to keep learning and growing. The concert continued with other performances. Meera's voice stayed with the audience long after the music ended. People talked about her for days, amazed that such talent could come from the most unexpected places. Later that evening, as the academy was closing, Pundit Ravi came to Meera and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You have not only sung well," he said, "but you have also taught us a lesson that true talent can be found anywhere. And sometimes the greatest music comes from the most unlikely hearts." Meera smiled, feeling proud but also deeply grateful. She knew this was just the beginning of her journey. There were many more songs to sing, many more stages to stand on, and many more hearts to touch. As she walked home under the stars, she felt a new sense of belonging. The world no longer seemed so distant or cold. She had found her voice, and with it, a place where she could shine. After the grand performance at the 50th anniversary celebration, Meera's life changed in ways she had never dreamed possible. The applause she received that night was not just for a single song. It was for the years of struggle, the silent hope, and the hidden talent that had finally been discovered and recognized. But with fame and recognition came new challenges, challenges that tested her courage, patience, and determination. In the days that followed, many doors opened for Meera. She was invited to perform at cultural events, radio shows, and even a few television programs. The news of the cleaner-turned-singer spread like wildfire, and people from all over the city wanted to hear her story. To meet the woman who had broken all stereotypes, at first Meera was overwhelmed by all the attention. Reporters would come knocking at her door, asking questions, wanting to take pictures. People who had never spoken to her before now sought her out for advice or simply to congratulate her. Even some of the Academy's most respected musicians reached out to offer their support and mentorship. It was a whirlwind, but Meera remained grounded. She never forgot where she came from or the years she had spent singing alone in her small room. One of the biggest surprises for her was the reaction of the people in her neighborhood. The same people who had looked down on her as just the cleaner now greeted her with smiles and pride. Children who once ignored her now followed her, asking for her autograph or to hear her sing. The local tea stall owner brought her cups of chai every afternoon and invited her to sit and talk. Mira realized that her success was inspiring others to believe in their own dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. However, some jealous students and even a few teachers from the academy whispered behind her back. They said she was lucky, that she did not deserve the fame, or that her voice was just a passing fad. They questioned whether she could truly sustain a career in classical music without formal training. These words stung, but Mira had learned long ago that criticism was part of the journey. Instead of letting it discourage her, she used it as fuel to work even harder. Her training with Pandit Ravi continued. Although the grand concert was over, he remained her mentor, guiding her to refine her skills, explore new ragas, and understand the deeper emotions of music. Mira realized that talent alone was not enough. Dedication and constant learning were necessary to grow as an artist. Pandit Ravi taught her how to handle the stage with confidence, how to connect with the audience, and how to express stories through her voice. One afternoon, as they practiced a particularly difficult raga, Pandit Ravi said something that stayed with Mira forever. "Music is not just notes and rhythms," he said gently. "It is the language of the heart. When you sing, you must forget everything else and speak directly to the listener's soul. That is the magic of true music." Mira practiced this every day. She sang not just with her voice, but with her entire being. She thought of her father, the radio, the streets where she had once cleaned floors, and the academy that had finally given her a chance. All these memories gave her strength and depth. As months passed, Mira's popularity grew. She was invited to perform in other cities, sometimes even in neighboring states. Each performance was an opportunity to share her story and inspire others. She often spoke about her humble beginnings and encouraged people to never give up on their dreams, no matter how hard life might be. Despite her busy schedule, Mira remained connected to her roots. She continued to live simply, helping her neighbors and caring for the stray animals she loved. She never forgot the kindness shown to her by Ramla Kaka and others who had supported her quietly. Her small home was always open to friends and fellow musicians who needed a place to practice or rest. One day, Mira received a letter from a young girl in a distant village. The girl wrote that she loved music but had no teacher or instruments. She asked Mira for advice on how to follow her passion. Mira smiled and wrote back, encouraging the girl to listen to music every day, to practice with patience, and to believe in herself. She realized that her journey had become more than just her own. It was now a beacon of hope for many. As Mira's career blossomed, she also faced the challenges of balancing fame and privacy. She sometimes felt tired from the constant attention and expectations. There were moments when she doubted herself, wondering if she could keep up the standards or if her voice would ever fail. But each time she found comfort in the simple act of singing alone in her room or on stage. One evening, during a quiet moment, Mira reflected on how far she had come. From a young girl who sang to an old radio, to a cleaner at a prestigious academy, to a celebrated musician standing before thousands of listeners. The journey had not been easy, no, but every hardship had shaped her into the person she was. She thought about the Maestro who had once mocked her, and then become her greatest supporter. She understood now that people often judge what they do not understand, but true recognition comes from seeing beyond appearances and believing in the hidden potential inside everyone. Mira's story became more than just about music. It became a story of courage, hope, and the power of dreams. It reminded people that no matter where you come from or what others say, if you have passion and perseverance, you can reach heights beyond imagination. Her voice continued to touch hearts, crossing boundaries of language and culture. She sang, not for fame or riches, but for the joy of sharing something pure and beautiful. And wherever she went, people listened not just to her music, but to the story of a simple woman who dared to sing her truth. Years later, Mira established a small music school in her neighborhood. She wanted to give back what she had received and create a place where anyone, regardless of background, could learn and grow. The school became a haven for children and adults alike, a place where dreams were nurtured and music was celebrated as a gift for all, as she taught her students. Mira often reminded them, music is inside all of us. You just have to listen carefully and let it out. Never let anyone tell you that you can't. Her journey, once hidden in the shadows, had now become a bright light for many. And though she never forgot her humble beginnings, Mira knew that her voice, simple yet powerful, had changed not only her life, but the lives of countless others. And so, the simple woman who was once mocked by a maestro stood tall, not just as a singer, but as a symbol of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit of the human heart.